This is Hammond.
And Jessica.
And you're listening to the Friendly Atheist Podcast. If you like what you're listening to, please go to patreon.com/Friendly Atheist Podcast. Hi, Jess.
Hey, Hammond. This is a last-minute thrown together
podcast.
It is.
We were going to do this tomorrow, but it's Thursday night, and then it's like, can you do this in 10 minutes? Boom, let's go. All right.
Mikey and I were literally like, do you want to watch more Twin Peaks tonight? And then Hammond texted, and I was like, no, I have to yell.
My job is to ruin everybody's night.
Yeah, it's going to be really romantic. So, okay.
I want to start with let's get some of the politics stuff out of the way.
Yeah.
Just because it wasn't like mind-shattering news, but this is important stuff to talk about. The first thing that I wanted to bring up is Congress is on the verge of passing this $1.3 trillion omnibus spending bill. Uh-huh. It's huge. It's like more than 2,000 pages. Nobody has read it because you can't, and they only gave them like a day to look at it.
That seems like a really reasonable way to run a country.
So they're going to pass it because that's what they do in this Congress. Thanks, Republicans. But one of the things that people were looking for is, do you remember last year, we talked about this at the time, President Trump said, along with Mexicans are going to pay for the wall, one of the other promises he's made ever since he was campaigning is that he's going to make it legal for church pastors to endorse candidates from the pulpit, the Johnson Amendment. He's going to repeal that. He's going to make it legal for church pastors to tell their congregations who to vote for, and they won't lose their tax exemptions at all.
Right.
In effect, this is kind of what was already happening.
Yeah.
But he was going to codify it.
Right. I want to be clear that, so essentially, in theory, a pastor can't say vote for Donald Trump, but they can say, well, there's only one candidate who supports our views of, fucking women over at every turn and making sure babies have guns.
We got to make sure the fetuses have guns.
Yes.
They could say that. They could say this is an issue that matters. What they can't say is
vote Donald Trump.
Yes.
But people still do that, and they bait the IRS. So it's
some pastors have videotaped themselves doing it, sent it to the IRS because they want a legal fight to strike down the Johnson Amendment.
So this is all the epitome of political grandstanding. It is a thing that means nothing. It is posturing. It's garbage.
But if the Johnson Amendment is repealed, what could happen in theory is that because it's a nonprofit, people could donate to the churches. Because they're churches, they don't have to reveal their donors. You have a lot of people who could theoretically donate to candidates via the churches, and it's dark money. You don't know who's donating, how much they're donating. You don't know what the church is getting. It's a horrible idea. And here's the thing.
Just like Jesus wanted.
Exactly. It says it in the Bible. There are people on the religious right who want to see this struck down. But by and large, most religious people, religious leaders don't want this to happen.
Because they don't want to open the door to exposing any of this shit. They don't want to say who their donors are, or how much money is going through, or how much Joel Osteen and his teeth are making.
If there's one thing some of these churches don't want to do is to play politics, because they know the winds shift in politics all the time.
Yeah.
And their whole message is Jesus is always the same. They want to spread the message of Jesus as they see it. And inserting politics, that would ruin everything from their perspective.
And that's a very wholesome way to believe that these pastors are thinking.
Yes. So
many of them certainly are not.
Why do we bring all that up? So Donald Trump signed an executive order last May saying, I'm going to repeal the Johnson Amendment. So and then when you read it, it's like, he didn't actually do anything. He just put on a show on the Rose Garden, he didn't do it. And even the religious right's this didn't help us. This isn't what we wanted. So then, because the whole thing is you can't executive order your way through this thing. You got to legislate this. Congress has to strike down the Johnson Amendment. So then the question is, well, how are they going to do that and get away with it?
Yeah.
And the answer was, well, let's try to get it through some of these budget bills because we have to pass the budget. Let's cram it in there.
In the last, how many months have they been punting the budget and
repeatedly,
doing
and they pass short-term spending bills.
And they just keep punting it down the road.
And the thing is, at least once, maybe twice, they've tried inserting, the House would insert the Johnson Amendment repeal in these bills, but the Senate says no, it disappears. They pass the spending bill. And so this has happened once or twice. And so again, with this omnibus bill that has to pass, the Republicans are going to make sure this thing passes.
Yeah.
They tried it again, but when the final version of it came out last night, wasn't in there.
Really?
Yeah. So they're not doing the Johnson Amendment, the repeal. They're not doing it this time either. Does it mean it's over? No, because again, there'll be another spending bill down the line. But once again, this is one of the Donald Trump core promises to his religious base. I'm going to get rid of this thing. It's not happening. There's a dog in the background.
Yeah, I'm so
but
sorry.
It's all good.
None
but
of us are ready for this tonight.
This is the thing. He hasn't delivered on this one big promise to the religious right.
Right.
It's really not a huge deal because, like we said, it effectively, it kind of is going on already and the IRS is looking the other way.
Right.
But he failed again. The secular side of this debate has won again temporarily. That's a big deal. That shouldn't be discounted, I guess. So good. That's good short-term news.
It's good. And honestly, don't
it's
you
a small
feel like
victory.
Right.
You know,
but honestly,
in this...
all of this feels like the reason people hate and mistrust government. Of like, it's just so sneaky and like, I just, it makes me so cynical to hear shit like this. And I try so hard to be like a Leslie Knope optimist, but y'all are making it real hard for me.
There's one more that had to do with the government that I wanted to bring up.
I have a government thing too.
This story involves something we've talked about in the past, which is that Jason Heap, he wanted to become a humanist chaplain
Oh, yeah,
in
we talked
the
about him
Navy.
last week.
Yeah. At the time, long story short, he wants to be the first humanist chaplain. Well, he wants to be a humanist chaplain. He would be the first because the military has all these non-religious people serving in it because there are atheists in foxholes. But they have 0 counselors that cater to the non-religious.
And this is specifically in the military, right? Because
in the Navy specifically.
Oh, in the Navy.
Yes.
Okay.
And so for a long time, he applied. His credentials are impeccable, but he never got through. They just kept saying no. And then finally, what happened last week that we talked about is that the Navy Chaplain Appointment and Retention Eligibility Advisory Board, basically the people who say, yeah, that guy seems fine, you can take him as a chaplain.
Yeah.
They said, you know what? We approve this guy. He's fine. There are higher ups that have to approve it, but they gave him their green light. That's a big deal.
And so now he's a chaplain, and we don't have to talk about this anymore.
Of course not, because after they issued that recommendation, some Republicans in the House, like 44 of them, and 24 Republicans in the Senate signed a letter.
24 in the Senate?
Sent separate
Don't
letters.
They have shit to do?
No, have you seen this government? They wrote letters to the Navy saying, don't you dare approve this humanist. Don't let him become a chaplain. And their reasoning was not the soldiers don't need it. It was that, well, a humanist is non-theistic. The chaplaincy, by definition, is a religious institution. How dare you, desecrate the name of chaplaincies?
What a dumb fucking bill. What a dumb hill to die on.
Yeah. It's absurd. Again, they're more interested in like the it's like the people who are like, I refuse to use a singular they in describing like your gender identity.
Do not get me started on the singular they. I have gotten in shouting matches over this thing. Singular they for life, y'all. Go ahead.
It's people who are like, but this is grammar. Other people are like, this is my humanity. Like, this is not a discussion.
Yeah, and also the English... Sorry, you shouldn't have mentioned grammar. The English language is really incomplete in that we don't have a way to call somebody or something that's gender neutral.
Right.
They is the closest
Singular.
thing we have. Thank you.
Yeah.
They is the closest thing we have. And yeah, maybe it's not grammatically perfect, but it's what we have. And he or she is clunky as fuck, so don't come at me with he or she, and also they is fine. Go
Send
ahead.
your message to @Blueberry.
@Blueberry, BLUEBRE. Fight me.
So the Republicans were saying, well, chaplain means religious. He's not religious.
such fucking
Therefore,
garbage.
why would these soldiers need help? Here's the thing, though. Last year, the Department of Defense classified humanism in their list of faiths for the sake of, like, military purposes. There's an argument to be made. It's not a philosophical one, but it's a legal military one that humanist in the military, that counts as a religion. Atheist, you could argue, counts as a religion if you're looking at it from the military's point of view.
Right.
There could be a case for religious discrimination here, for saying this guy meets every criteria that any other chaplain would have,
right.
But he's the one that keeps getting told no.
Okay.
That he hasn't announced any lawsuit or anything, but I'll finish this part of the story, which is these Republicans sent the letters to the Navy saying, don't accept the recommendation.
Cool,
you
guys.
should say no. The Navy said no the other day.
Thanks, Navy.
Uh-huh.
Here's my question, and I feel like I brought this up last week, and I'm still like not super clear on it. So the role of chaplain is sort of like a therapeutic sort of.
Yes. Think of it as counselor. That's
Okay.
the simplest way to put it.
So here's my question. So if I'm in the Navy,
Yeah.
which I obviously would be, I'm very strong and brave.
Yes.
If I'm in the Navy and I need counseling, is there any kind, is it like chaplains, or you can go see just like a therapist that has nothing to do with the religious realm? Or is it, these are your chaplain, this is your support system, otherwise like go drink about it?
I could be wrong. I apologize to the people who serve if I get this wrong. I don't think they have secular options.
Okay.
Now, there may be religious chaplains who can do the job secularly, but they do have to see a religious chaplain because that's the only option.
Okay.
And again, the problem is if you're like thinking, I just lost my friend in combat, or I'm going through a rough time at home because, this life is a tough one. And you don't want someone to counsel you and say like,
Jesus has the answer or whatever.
Pray to God, look to faith, anything like that. You want someone who speaks your language. You want someone who can talk to you about how to cope with this stuff, who doesn't bring God into the discussion.
Yeah, because I feel like even I have been and am in therapy for a long time, and like I feel like even if I was religious, that kind of counseling, you don't always need like just pray on it or whatever. I feel like at some point somebody has to be like, here are things you're dealing with and here are tools to deal with it with. And maybe like Jesus is somewhere in the background, but I find it frustrating more than anything that if this is the case, that if I am in the Navy, whatever my religious belief is, and need counseling, my only option is to go see a religious advisor.
And the thing is, there are more atheists, openly atheistic people in the military than Hindus, Jews, Mormons combined.
Really?
And yet, there are Muslim chaplains. I think there's a Hindu chaplain or two. There are Jewish chaplains. Like, they have religious chaplains for the other minority religions, and that's fine. But they refuse to allow one specifically to help those non-religious soldiers.
Isn't that... God, it just
By the way, Roger Wicker is the senator from Mississippi who wrote the Senate's letter. And so after the Navy said no at his behest, this is what Roger Wicker said. The Navy's leadership has done the right thing. The appointment of an atheist to an undeniably religious position is fundamentally incompatible with atheism's secularism.
Oh, he's protecting us.
He's helping. He's helping grammar.
So much, Colonel Wicker.
He's helping definitions.
What's his name? Richard Wicker.
Roger Wicker.
Roger Wicker.
Yes.
He just sounds like a Southern plantation owner. I'm not gonna lie. I kind of love that name, if I'm being honest. Okay. So here's the thing. I don't like to spend my days and specifically evenings with my good friend Hemmett being angry and annoyed. But they keep making it really difficult for me to not be angry and annoyed. Like, how? It's 2018. What are we doing here?
Yeah. It's not like this is costing them anything. They're not losing anything by having a non-religious chaplain.
It's not even conceding any kind of rights.
No, it's literally, you might be able to help a lot of these thousands and thousands of soldiers who are not religious. Nope, you're going to ruin my definition. There's no reason to say no.
It's so opaque. It's so opaquely just grandstanding. It makes me so angry. I don't know. I'm not going to say regular words because I'm just fucking furious about it.
It's mad.
And also, I'm really not in my normal podcast headspace, so I feel like my words aren't coming super easy. I have a government thing too.
Yes.
Have you heard of a gentleman named Roger Severino?
Go on.
Okay, I would love to tell you about him. So Roger Severino grew up in L.A. He's the son of Colombian immigrants, and he's got really kind of, I don't know if harrowing, and maybe it's not that dramatic, but troubling tales of being in high school and being discriminated against. Kids calling, he's on the swim team. Kids called him, racial slurs. He said that when he was in high school, his counselor kept trying to make him take shop classes in vocational training. He asked, don't you have honors classes? And the counselor said, yeah, but who is white? Yeah, but you have to take a test. This guy took the test, got in the honors classes, ended up going through Harvard Law.
Okay.
He has a really interesting and great career. I was trying to think of a better word than great. Came up empty. So he was in the Justice Department Civil Rights Division. He famously protected black citizens in New Orleans from housing discrimination that was happening in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. A real stellar,
seems good.
A real stellar servant of the American people.
Sure.
So he recently was placed in the Department of Health and Human Services, specifically in the civil liberties segment of that. So
sounds right.
So I didn't know this until 20 minutes ago, and Hemant texted me to say he was coming over and I needed to do research. There is a whole segment of the Department of Health and Human Services that is lawyers who handle cases of people. Let me see. I'm going to read this out loud. It's the Civil Rights Division, and it is where to go? So to ensure that you're not, Civil Rights Department ensure you're not denied health care due to race or gender, and to protect medical privacy. So they get thousands and thousands of complaints every year, and they address these. And so, by all accounts, this Severino guy is like aces, right? Like here's the thing. Hemant, my friend, he is Catholic, and he's aggressively Catholic. He's one of those aggressive Catholics. So under Obama, the rights under the Health and Human Services was extended to the LGBTQ community. The queer community has a long history of being mistreated by the medical community, specifically trans people. Something like 30% of trans adults say that they've been discriminated in some way or another by their doctor. You
want someone watching over this.
Yes, it's a community that needs and deserves to be protected. Severino's focus is sort of elsewhere. So his main thing is that he's very concerned about the protection of healthcare workers who have to work against their conscience. He says America's doctors, he was on NPR, can't think of it. He was on NPR and said, America's doctors and nurses are dedicated to saving lives, and they shouldn't be bullied out of the practice of medicine simply because they object to performing abortions against their conscience. He thinks that religious freedom is the, quote, first freedom, and he's issued a rule that allows employers to refuse to cover birth control as part of their employee health insurance plans if those employers have a religious or moral objection to contraception.
So we're allowing discrimination if it's faith-based.
So this man who has been a champion of so many people in need because of his Catholic faith and his anti-abortion stances is putting that on the top of his agenda, that he's not concerned that trans people are not getting the health care they need or that women are not getting the health care they need. His concern is for all those good, sweet nurses who are being like handcuffed and made to perform abortions or whatever. And I would argue that, obviously I was exaggerating for the sake of emphasis, but for me, the thing that fucking kills me is the if employers have a religious or moral objection to contraception. And I mean, God, I feel like I fucking say this every week, but I'm really sick of people putting morals onto contraception and my right to use my body. I find that extraordinarily disingenuous. Here's the thing. With the abortion thing, obviously I am pro-choice and always will be pro-choice and stand very firm in my belief there. When I hear from people who are anti-abortion, I don't agree with them. I understand where they're coming from, right? Like, I understand that in their mind, this is the reality of what's happening. Fine, whatever. I'm so troubled, however, by this thing about contraception. Like, I just don't understand how in 2018 we can still be like, oh, contraception is super controversial. I don't understand it. I don't understand why we're still here. And I've said this a million times. Like, I'm 32. I've been married for 2.5 years. I don't want to be pregnant right now, and that is my right. But also, like, I also want to have sex sometimes, and that's also my right. Like, to point to
and
contraception.
This guy's making it a punishment.
Yeah, so I now work for a fairly small company, and in theory, if my boss's boss was like, no, birth control is icky, they could legally deny me of this under this kind of law. And I don't fucking understand it. I don't understand it.
What surprises me, and it's the same thing I've seen with like Ben Carson in Housing and Urban Development, because they're making it harder for certain groups of people, LGBT people, to even get the housing stuff they need.
Yeah.
His story, too, is one of he faced discrimination. He overcame that discrimination. That is part of his life story. And you would think he would be more attuned to other people going through similar struggles, and yet he's making it harder for them. That sounds like what Severino is doing, too.
Yes.
So, like, you of all people should be a champion for struggling people or people who feel like their rights are being oppressed, and you're siding with the oppressors. That makes no sense.
Two things. I retweeted something recently that was, I thought, put it really concisely. There are two kinds of people. One, the kind of people who say, I never want anybody to suffer like I did, or B, the kind of people who say, well, I suffered, so you have to too. That's one thing.
I made it through. You'll be able to get through this.
What fucking monsters. Second, somebody tweeted, because last week I started to talk about the Ben Carson dinette set or whatever, and they thought that they I like stopped myself in one of my rare instances of self-control, and I halted myself from a tasty rant. Essentially, what I was going to say is like this kind of, which did you hear? Ben Carson blamed his wife.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So,
apparently, it's not the first time he did that. Like, he throws his wife under the bus a lot of times.
Poor woman. Why I want to bring up things like that, and I think it is worth bringing up, even though it's not necessarily relevant to our particular subject matter, is that $31,000 for whatever, like a table and chairs, like we're sitting at right now. I got this at a garage sale. My problem is when Republicans specifically talk about government waste and where's this money going, what they always zero in on are the people in most need who need the money the most, but let's make welfare checks harder to get, and let's crack down on healthcare and things like that. But these, and that's what, thousands of dollars a person per year. But Ben Carson spent a halfway decent year's salary on a fucking table. And like, if you're really, you GOP, if you're really concerned that what our problem is as a country is government waste, then maybe like look at your own fucking house. Anyway, go ahead.
Yes.
That was my thing.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Let me talk about this thing that happened. Sorry, that could apply to every single story.
So on our game tonight.
I'll get on it. Okay, the story is this.
Oh, hey, Loyola won, huh?
They did. Look at that.
None did a thing?
The sister Jean, the 98-year-old woman, is like storming the court.
Oh, is she doing great? I only know about it because I was scouring Twitter trying to find things, and everybody kept talking about Loyola. I was like, I don't have time for this right now. I need stories. Okay, go ahead.
It's a happy story, in theory, though I think she's getting on everyone's nerves after this much exposure. But whatever.
What, they made
she deserves
Elite
it.
Eight question mark?
They did make the Elite Eight.
Do you have a connection to Loyola, or you're just supporting Chicago?
No, Chicago.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
And also because they never make the basketball tournament.
Yeah, like, Loyola is like
I would be rooting for any team that's not like Duke or Kentucky that makes it every single time.
Yeah, and for some reason, like Loyola is just based in the north side of Chicago, and for some reason, any school that's not like in rural Ohio, I'm like, fuck yeah, guys, like, get it.
As I was saying, no, it's all good. This 55-year-old woman from Spain, she died, I guess a while back, but a paper about her just came out now, because here's the reason she died. She was doing something called apitherapy, apitherapy. She died of that. And here's what it is. You know acupuncture, where they're like sticking the needles in your body? She did that, but with bees.
What?
Yeah. It's bee acupuncture. Live bees and their stingers are used.
Bees?
Yeah.
Damn it.
Why? Because she was experiencing, quote, muscular contractures and stress. Yeah.
Contractions?
It's muscular contractures. Like, it was hurting. She's in pain. She's stressed out. So the bees, they put bees.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
Bees.
They put her, like, in a room with live bees, and they're like, go at it, honey boys?
I want, like, if you look at a picture of someone doing apitherapy,
And I will not.
and you will not, it's like a bee on tweezers, and they're like, here, sting Jessica. Like,
Don't tell them to sting me. They can hear you.
So, but here's what happened. She did this. I'm reading from the article here. She developed wheezing, sudden loss of consciousness after
Was
the
she
live
allergic
bee
to bees?
Apparently, it's not that she was allergic, but when you're already going through a difficult time and you're getting repeated bee stings, it can exacerbate whatever that is going on.
Oh, you mean the venom is probably not great for the human fucking body?
Yeah, a lot of venom is
or
not
poison?
gonna. It's venom. The venom compounds from repeated bee stings, they said, can act as allergens and cause everything from swelling to death.
Oh.
She was on the death side of the equation.
Can I guess what she had?
Yeah. Here's the thing, though. Where do you get an idea? Who thinks this is a good idea?
Swear to fucking Christ, if you tell me it's in the Bible, I'm going to lose my
It's not
goddamn
the
mind.
Bible.
Okay.
It's close. It's Gwyneth Paltrow.
No!
Because Gwyneth Paltrow of the Goop
Gwen!
and supposedly acting, she's the one that promotes apitherapy.
Listen, look, Gwyneth Paltrow has gone down a monstrous path, but she was an excellent actress. Shakespeare in Love was my fucking jam in high school. Go ahead.
It's not just her. Kate Middleton also did it. Kate Middleton promotes apitherapy. Of course, neither of them have a background in science, but like both of them have done interviews where they say, oh yeah, I did apitherapy and it helped me, because they always promote the pseudoscientific stuff.
Kate Middleton? Isn't she pregnant again? Is she pregnant with number 3?
Yeah, I'm sure she is. So, yay. Okay, royal family. But like, what are you doing, people who have followings and are celebrities?
Fuck.
So, B-Lady is dead because she took like Gwyneth Paltrow's advice.
That's
also,
busted.
don't put jade eggs up your body. That's a dumb idea too. So, here's... Do you want a
not
happier?
for health purposes.
Do you want a happier?
Live
do you
your
want
best life. If that's what you're into. Yeah, I'm always needing happier.
I'll do a happy, then I'll give you some sad. Here's a happier story. In Europe, this new report just came out. It was by a theologian.
We have universal health care and people are great. Mm-hmm. Is that what the report is?
Not even close. Here's the thing. It came out by a theology professor at a Catholic university in London. So he put this report out saying, I studied religion and the demographics and what's going on.
Cool.
And he's freaked out.
Oh.
And what he's saying is
What's his name?
more and more, Stephen Bullivant. He's saying more and more young people under the age of 30 are leaving religion. I know. Specifically, what he found is that in the Czech Republic, for example, 91% of people under the age of 30 have no religious affiliation. There were 12 countries in Europe where that number was above 50%.
Wow.
And these are we're not talking like China where it's kind of forced upon you, or like some sort of, if you're religious, we're going to come after you. No. They have the choice. But in 12 countries, more than 50% of people under the age of 30,
and even in a lot of these
religion.
countries, there is a state religion, right?
Some of them, yeah. There is like a state church, national church. And not even that. So maybe you say, well, maybe it's a cultural thing. Like maybe they're religious, but not spiritual, or whatever it is. I'm spiritual, but not religious. Maybe it's that. That's not it. Because in a lot of these countries, most of them said they never go to church, or they rarely go to church. Like if you exclude the holidays like Easter and Christmas, they really never go to church. In the Czech Republic, again, the most irreligious of this bunch, we're talking like 95% of people never set foot in church.
Wow.
And we're talking never or less than once a week, which means not regularly. And again, once again, we have several countries where more than half the population never goes. And every country that they studied here, like 30 countries, except for Poland, we're talking like 75% and up never or rarely go to church.
Cow.
Whoa. Like, you don't see those numbers in the U.S. for sure.
No.
But it's just amazing how, like you said, even in places where there are like a state church, where there's a national religion, where it's kind of the default setting is to be religious. These people have a choice, and their choice is, I want nothing to do with it.
Which honestly, that's what it is. It's not like a defiant thing. It's like,
And again, the guy who put out this report is thinking this is a bad thing.
This is the Catholic gentleman?
Yes. And what he said is many young Europeans, quote, will have been baptized and then never darken the door of a church again.
Wow.
Like the cultural thing is not being passed on generation to generation.
Probably all those kids are like me. They had a mean grandma who made them get baptized, and then they never had to go to church again.
They did it as a ritual, as a rite, as a baby, and then it's like, oh, I have a choice whether to
Put
go.
the baby in a white dress. Everybody eats chicken skewers. It's a great day.
I want to talk about two really serious stories that are very disturbing. This one at least has a happy ending. Okay, we've talked about this before. In Memphis, there is a pastor named Andy Savage, and his deal was that, very seriously, like 20 years ago, he was a youth pastor. Mm-hmm. He was overseeing a girl who was 17 years old, and at one point, he was like driving her somewhere.
Yes, I remember.
They went to a secluded area. He basically coerced her into performing oral sex on him, and he apologized after the act in some sort of weird way. Obviously, this traumatized her. It never left her. But he went on to be a pastor at this mega church in Memphis, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. Recently, she basically, after he said something about sexual assault, like the Yay, Me Too movement, she's like, I remember what you did to me. She basically said, she talked to people. She told the story. Long story short, he apologized to his church. This is a couple months ago. He apologized, but he didn't go into details. What he said is, I told my church elders about this when I got hired. We don't know what he told them other than
like, it's really fine, dog.
Yeah, they're like, well, you repented. Like you
and nobody got hurt.
And he didn't say what he did. He just said, I sinned. I had like an indiscretion or something like that when I was this youth pastor. And he's like, I apologize to the globe. I sinned. Whatever. They gave him a standing ovation for that, the congregation.
I remember because
he's the victim in all this.
Oh, he's so brave.
So since that time, he stepped down while the church conducted an investigation.
And thorough it was.
Right. And so, by the way,
what
one of the other
investigation even entail?
I think what it would entail if they were doing this right.
Whoa.
And I don't know.
That's a pretty big leap already.
If they were doing this right, they would pull in a third party saying you could talk to everybody from the church you want to talk to. You could talk to the victim. You can make your own conclusion, and we will act on your conclusion. We have nothing to do with this.
Okay.
I don't know that that's what happened necessarily.
I'm going to say almost certainly not.
But in this case, let me step back. They did do an investigation. We don't know what the investigation found, but here's what the church said this week. There was an independent investigation. It's completed. The findings were submitted to the church elders. And while they found no other incidents other than the one that everyone confessed to, Andy Savage admits that happened.
Right.
We all agreed that he should resign.
Oh.
Okay. Oh. So Andy Savage has resigned. The church accepts his resignation. Good. I mean, that's good. That's what should have happened.
Is that the end of the story?
It is.
Oh.
I guess here's the thing. The question is that enough? I mean, for the sake of this particular story, I guess justice is done. The statute of limitations, in case you're curious, it's long expired.
And
there's no charges.
Seem to be moving to press charges.
No, and she couldn't if she wanted to. But it's one of those things where she's like, I've had to live with this my whole life. You've had to do nothing because of this. So finally he gets something about what's coming to him, I guess. Here's what I want to know.
You know that motherfucker's just going to get a book deal and repent and end up at a megachurch somewhere.
We'll find out. I don't know. I don't know what's going to... We don't know what's going to happen to this guy. But that's a question that I had. Specifically, what's going to happen to this guy now? Is he going to work in the church system? Because, again, when you're a pastor, one of the things we've seen from a lot of the pastors who leave the church because they're atheists...
They don't have applicable skills.
Yeah, what else are they going to do? Yeah. It's hard to leave when you're in that system. Also, I'm really curious what that investigation found that the church didn't already know. How come they were like, oh, well, we got the results, and you know what? He should resign. Why couldn't you say that earlier? What is it that the investigation discovered that you were reluctant to do? I don't know.
Are you gently implying that there could be more?
No, I'm not implying there's anything worse. I want to know what the church is going to do to fix this and to make sure this sort of situation doesn't happen again. Because look, why did the congregation give this guy a standing ovation for what he did? Did they really not know the seriousness of what he did? How come they didn't know what he did when he said, I told the elders about it before they hired me?
Right.
And he's saying, I'm going to step down. Surely the people in the congregation would want to know, like, what did you do?
Well, it's as soon as the spotlight gets shown on them, then all of a sudden they have to act. Like this kind of shit happens not just in the church and not just in Hollywood, all over the place. That people are like, oh yeah, we knew about it and we were aware, but we made like the best choice for the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you guys know about it? Oh, you're right.
We've talked about this with Lawrence Krauss as well.
Yeah.
Like, okay, he didn't do what Andy Savage did,
sure,
but the allegations were serious, and the question is, what's going to happen to him? Is he just going to kind of wait it out and then go back to writing and speaking places? Who knows? Andy Savage, I don't know what's going to happen. I want to know if this church is going to do anything meaningful in how they talk about sex and sexual assault.
No,
because again, in evangelical
no.
circles, they're very much anything sexual is bad. If this victim, whether she was coerced or not, did anything sexual, it's one of those like, well, it's probably her fault.
Sure.
Are they going to change the way they talk about this stuff? I don't know the answer to that. And I wonder what other churches will do if one of their pastors was guilty of this stuff.
Yeah.
And it confessed to it anyway.
No, I think it's wildly optimistic to think that this would spark a conversation about any real or meaningful change. That would be the dream. And I think that's what's happening largely in the secular world, is that we are having more difficult and unpleasant conversations about what sexual assault looks like and what it means.
Yeah. And I will give the secular community credit for one thing, which is we're more permissive about sex and consent and all that sort of stuff. Not assault, obviously.
Yeah.
But like in general, we are much more lax and lenient about talking about sex, dealing with sex. So, and when this stuff happens, like, yeah, there are some people who need to be dragged to the finish line about how do you talk about this stuff? How do you act about it? But the organizations that might have Lawrence Krauss speak, they eventually said we're not going to invite him. That's really all they could do in some cases.
You bring up an interesting point with regard to like in say Hollywood, just for the sake of conversation. Like if somebody admits to having an affair, like yeah, that's not great, but it's not blackball worthy. Whereas in the church, like you had an affair or you got divorced or you raped somebody, like those are sometimes feel like the same level of crime.
Any sin is a sin.
So it's really hard to take those things seriously when you're like, oh, somebody cheated on their wife in a consensual adult relationship versus somebody like tried to get a teenager to go down on him. Like those are very uneven like offenses, as it were, but the church seems to be comfortable lumping those in.
So I'm curious what this church is going to do with Andy Savage.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer. And then this is something that just happened right before I came over, before we started recording this, because Thursday night, the Chicago Tribune just published this bombshell of a piece. It is long. And I only say that to say they clearly did the research. They must have spent a lot of time on this article.
And this happened in our backyard.
Yeah, and this is in our backyard. And basically the story is Willow Creek Community Church. It is one of the most influential, maybe the best word to describe it. It's one of the most influential evangelical churches in the country. It's not flashy or showy in the sense that they don't have a television ministry. If I told you the guy who founded the church's name, and you're not a Christian, there's a good chance you've never heard of him, Bill Hybels.
Yeah.
Maybe you haven't heard of this guy. Like they do what they do. They're very influential inside the bubble. If you're outside the bubble, there's a good chance you've never heard of them. But the way they do church there has influenced the way a lot of evangelical churches run across the country. Like people have been inspired in terms of what they teach in church, in terms of how they conduct their services, et cetera, because of what they did at Willow Creek. Okay, so every time they talk about stuff, they tend to make news.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how influential this church is. They make a decision, people hear. One time, I think the Starbucks CEO was invited to speak at their leadership conference, which is ostensibly secular. Like, how do you be a good leader? And he said, I'm not going to do it because I know you have views about homosexuality. that I don't agree with.
Yay.
And he decided not to come. The church said, you know what? We respect your decision. We urge all of you, don't boycott it. Go get a Starbucks. Like, that guy is a good guy. We disagree on this issue. But that was a controversy at one point for this. Okay. The reason I bring this all up, the bombshell report that just came out is that the founder of this church, Bill Hybels, I'm going to quote to you from the Chicago Tribune. He's been accused of a lot of inappropriate behavior.
Yeah.
And the reason this is such a big deal is because I don't know if this is a fair comparison, but imagine Billy Graham, who just died, who is known as like, you're above it all. You're the guy everyone looks up to. Mm-hmm. He's the one. Bill Hybels. Here's what the Tribune article says. The alleged behavior that multiple women have accused him of includes suggestive comments, extended hugs to the point of an unwanted kiss, invitations to hotel rooms. It also included an allegation of a prolonged consensual affair with a married woman who later said her claim about the affair was not true.
Whoops.
And maybe the reason for that is she just wanted nothing to do with this story.
Yeah, this is not a fun situation to be in.
There's a lot of allegations of just, you've made a lot of women very uncomfortable. Yeah. He never, again, if you read the story, he's not assaulting anybody. He may have been ethically, we could say, compromised at some points, like in his decisions. But one of the things that really stood out is we've heard of the Billy Graham rule, the Mike Pence rule, which is like, if you're a male Christian leader, don't be alone with another woman who's not your wife. Well, they follow that rule at this church. Like, the leadership, the men are told. Yeah, Bill Hybels has told the men, leaders in his church, like, don't be alone with another woman. And yet, the story goes, he's invited plenty of women who were not his wife to be alone with him. And at some points, like,
in a sexual way, or just in a, like,
let's come talk about church stuff.
We're two adults who can be in a room alone together.
If that was the case, this probably wouldn't be as big of a deal. But the story from many of these women is that he invited them over and then got very, like,
handsy.
Suggestive.
Creepy.
I think creepy, like, might be closer to the truth, because he's not doing anything. There's no jury involved here. All right.
Right.
No one's convicting this guy of anything. And by the way, I should point out, he denies everything.
Oh, you don't say.
It's not a denial like she's making it all up. He's saying, I didn't invite her to my hotel room, period. It's not that, no, she was there, but nothing happened. Nope, she's just lying. Every woman in this story is lying, according to him.
Well, we're a collective group, so like when women get our heads around something, we will lie like a unit.
And he goes even further. Like, so the question comes from the reporter, like, well, how really every single one of these women lied?
So how did it get to this point?
And his response was, this has been a calculated and continual attack on our elders and on me for 4 long years. It's time that gets identified, blah, blah, blah. The charges against me are false. There still to this day is no evidence of misconduct on my part.
I told you, women are really organized.
And here's the thing. If you read the story, many of these women spoke to each other. Like, and it's scary because this is a tight-knit group. Like, so if a woman tells like a woman something, they're probably telling it to a woman who's in church leadership.
Yeah.
And we're talking other colleagues of his who are pastors at the church who are women. And this is one of those evangelical churches that has women in leadership. Even they were told about it. Some of them experienced it. And they were like, yeah, it was weird. Like, I think in one situation, they were overseas in a trip in Europe or something. And like a woman's husband was on the trip with her. And he's like, come to the hotel room, but like, don't bring your husband. Like that sort of weirdness. So again, I'm not in any way comparing what he did to Andy Savage or any of these other stories we've been talking about. The reason I bring it up is if this church that is as influential and respected has experienced this sort of thing, and it'll be interesting to see. Again, it just happened. I haven't, like I told Jessica right before this, I haven't had a chance to process this story.
Yeah, this is brand new.
Or read any of the reactions to it either. But this is one of those things that I don't know that anyone's going to pay attention outside the bubble because, again, these are not he assaulted somebody allegations. And it's a church that no one really pays attention to because they're not crazy. They believe all the same stuff, but they're not rabidly anti-gay. They're not political like some other churches. Yeah. They're under the radar.
I mean, they have a pretty big influence in the Chicagoland area, for sure.
They do.
I think the importance of things like this, and I would even like Lawrence Krauss type accusations, is that I think we're uncovering now, like, okay, so the Harvey Weinstein thing was like, oh, men are trading sexual favors for job opportunities. And that's like obviously terrible. And then the next level down was like, oh, men coerce women into, or like make uncomfortable advances rather, or use their influence. But then we kind of get down to this layer that's, I would say, not as maybe traumatizing to each individual, but really hurts us as a society because these kinds of actions, these kinds of microaggressions, this sort of way of, this is the dude that runs this place and he gives me the fucking EBGBs, or he like touched me weirdly on the small of my back. It makes the community, it makes the world hostile for women.
And again, these are influential church. You want to work with this guy because of what he can do. Again, as far as everyone will tell you, who other people who have worked with them, he inspired them. He worked, like, you don't want to be on this guy's bad side because nobody's on this guy's bad side. So when those, like you said, those microaggressions happen, it's like, well, that was weird, but what am I going to do about that?
Yeah, and so you're in this position of like, this thing's happening and I'm not happy about it, but like, what could I possibly do? Or who could I tell? Or is there any point in telling, because he didn't do anything illegal.
Right.
It's
that
just
story about the woman who said there was some sexual thing going on, but then she denied that later on. That story was she confessed to a friend of hers in the church leadership. This happened, and it happened multiple times, and like it shouldn't have. It was sinful, whatever. But then when that person said, look, we need to do an investigation of this guy. We're going to do a real investigation. We need you to tell your story. To what you told me, tell it to the investigator. She's like, no, it didn't happen.
And I don't fucking blame her. Like, what does she have to gain?
Right.
This woman is going to, if she comes forward, she's just going to get her reputation looked over incessant. Like, if she made out with a dude in a bar when she was 19, that will be dragged up and she will be put on trial because she dared to
She was one of the few sources who went unnamed throughout. Like,
which I do not blame her for. I don't blame her for it.
But look, we're recording this on Thursday night. The story just dropped. It'll probably be in the physical paper tomorrow for whatever that's worth. But it's one of those things where when it happens to this church and this person... By the way, Bill Hybels retired more or less... like, I think 2 years ago from the church,
I didn't know that.
In the sense that he's still part of that community, but his role as like the leader of the church,
it's more symbolic than...
he kind of stepped down to say, while I'm still around, why don't you take over? He actually put a woman in charge of that church, which is a big deal in the evangelical world. I think there's two people kind of running the church, but he's still there so he can help them transition.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome leadership in that sense.
Sure.
But he's still involved, and that's why this is still a big deal. Like, he is not just the founder of this huge mega church.
Yeah.
He's still like this. He's looming over it largely. So it's a big deal. And I'll be interested to see how that plays out.
Ugh.
Let me give you a slightly happier, well, not as disturbing story about a church. Right. There was a story in the New York Times about another one of those hipster churches.
What the fuck does that mean?
Yeah. These are the churches where like
Jesus has a man bun and an undercut?
Yes. And the pastor wears the skinny jeans and
he sits backwards in his chair and raps with his congregation.
Yeah. And so the guy who's running this is Chad Beach. His name is Chad. Here's the most hipstery part of...
I was trying to make a joke about how they did like Weird Al style parodies of pop songs, and then he said his name was Chad, and I just couldn't.
It's spelled... the church is named Zoe Church.
Zoe?
Except when they quoted him, he's like, oh no, it's Zoe, as in Beyonce. It's like, first of all, don't say that.
First of all, how dare you?
That's not how you pronounce her name. No one says it like that.
Beyonce.
Yeah.
Is there an... I know this is a dumb point. Is there an accent on the E?
No.
Okay.
I know. I paid attention to that too, and the answer is no.
Letters have meaning.
But this is one of those guys. Of course,
Zoe,
he also
fucking dare you, Chad.
He also is a spiritual advisor to Justin Bieber, because all of these hipster pastors are spiritual advisors to Justin Bieber. Here's the point I want to drag out about this particular guy, though. Like, okay, you want to be like the quote unquote cool pastor so that you can reach this new generation of future Christians, whatever. Fine. Here's what really bugged me about this guy. They asked him in the article specifically, like, okay, well, what is your stance on like abortion and homosexuality, things like that? They asked him about abortion, and he declined to give a specific answer. And I think what he said, I'm paraphrasing here, is like, I'm just a Bible sort of guy.
That doesn't mean anything, Chad.
No, it doesn't.
Chad.
And here's the thing. All of these hipster-y type of pastors, the cool pastors, here's what bugs me.
No one named Chad's ever been
I
cool.
know they all hold the same evangelical beliefs about, homosexuality is wrong.
With Chad's cool jam,
They oppose abortion. They oppose women's rights. They oppose LGBT. They oppose LGBT rights, but they refuse to say it out loud because they know if they say that, they know if they say that, it'll turn off everybody they're trying to reach.
Hey guys, let's not talk about abortion. I'm just gonna rock out to some DMB.
There was a guy, Andrew Marin, I think we talked about him way back when, but he had a group that basically said, look, he lives in Chicago. There's a Boys Town is in downtown Chicago. And he wanted to make a ministry that caters to like the LGBT, or not caters to them, but like reaches out to them because other Christians don't. And there are pictures that went viral online of like during the gay pride parade, you see them holding signs saying, we apologize on behalf of the church. And you see, someone marching in the parade, giving them a huge hug.
Yeah.
Beautiful picture.
Really nice.
And what always bugged me, and by the way, I've talked to this guy before. I said this to him. He's been criticized for this all the time, which is, well, okay, so where do you stand on marriage equality? And they won't answer the question.
Yeah, I think
because they don't want to turn off anybody, so they take zero stance on what should be the easiest moral question ever. And this hipster pastor Chad guy does the same thing.
Chad.
He won't answer the question about abortion. They didn't talk about homosexuality specifically in the piece, but he seems to go along the same lines where they're not going to say, yeah, marriage equality is fine. We support that because
I don't understand the level of human being that's like tricked by Chad's
who are these millennials who go to this church?
Like his sleeve tattoo and his septum piercing, and he's like, just Jesus wanted us to be chill to each other. I don't know why this guy was from the 1990s in my head, or maybe they just don't mention it.
One of the other things he didn't want to talk about is politics, which, again, like we already talked about the Johnson Amendment. Like, I'm kind of glad the pastor's not talking about politics, but I don't need you to say like who to vote for. You can easily say, you could talk about the issues we're dealing with. One of the writers for Friendly Atheist, Sarah Kaplan, said very clearly, look, Jesus talked about these issues. He talked about impure women, quote unquote. He talked about forgiving your enemies and helping immigrants. And like, that's what Jesus stood for. So how do you say I'm not going to talk about politics when, according to her interpretation, like Jesus always talked about these political, quote unquote, issues? It's like this guy wants to be cool, but he doesn't want to say anything controversial. And what bugs me is like, if there's one thing I know millennials get stereotyped all the time, but like if there's one thing that is in common with all those stereotypes is that they like authenticity.
Yes.
Right? Like they want you to be real with them. Don't talk down to them. Don't be condescending.
And
that's why they do Chipotle, right? Like it's the real ingredients. I don't know. It's like, oh, the coffee had to be harvested the right way. Whatever.
Oh, are you
authentically? And this guy Chad is an authentic.
Oh, I hate Chad so much.
So
does he have an undercut? Do you know what an undercut is?
I know.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But I'm guessing the answer is sure. He does have a tattoo.
Is it cool? Is it like a Jesus fish? Is it as cool as my Darwin tattoo?
No.
Okay, so I think, yes, millennials definitely crave authenticity. And sort of the flip side of that coin, maybe I guess it's the same thing, but we as millennials, you and I, millennials, we see through inauthenticity so easily because it's so easy to see. It's so disingenuous. It's so transparent. It's just the same way with these like Parkland kids are so good at fucking Twitter because it's their native language.
Right.
millennials grew up with people like trying to be cool and rap with them and like be the cool substitute teacher with the ponytail who sits on the chair backwards. Like we've seen that our entire lives, so we know what inauthentic assholes look like. And guess what? They all look like Chad. I hate Chad so much.
Let me go on a tangent
What's his
from
tattoo,
there.
Though?
I don't know. It probably says in the article. I don't know what it said.
Oh, I thought you had a picture.
I did not have a
Chad.
picture of the tattoo.
What's
Chad? Just look up the name Chad. Find the first tattoo. They all.
Go ahead.
I'm sure all the tattoos
Go
look
find
the same.
your rant, Dennis Miller.
Here's the rant. Connor Lamb. He won that special election in Pennsylvania like last week.
Yeah.
I've seen criticism this week from Democrats who are saying this is a guy who says he's for abortion rights, but personally, he says, I don't support abortion. I'm pretty sure he's Catholic. He says, personally, I choose this, but it's as a matter of policy, I would never vote that way because whatever, pro-choice. I am not bothered by that at all. Tim Kaine said the exact same thing. He's hardcore Catholic, but
Chad Lewis. Yep.
No, wrong guy, wrong
Okay.
Chad.
This guy's got a dimple chin. I'm sorry. I'm listening to you.
So the question is, do you care about these? I know there's always the purity test for Democrats. You're going to kick everyone out of the tent at some point. But for someone like him who is politically, like legislatively pro-choice, I don't care if he's not pro-choice in his private life at all.
Were you going to do a rant, or are you trying to set me up?
That
on a
was the rant. I've seen people criticize this guy
we need
for
to
saying
work on your rants. They're not as angry as they should be.
I've seen people get mad at this guy for holding this conflicting principle.
I don't think those people are
especially heard it from pro-lifers, quote unquote, who said this guy's a hypocrite. He's trying to get the political win from Democrats by saying he's pro-choice, but he's not, and that's really bad. Like, just pick one.
Okay.
That I don't get. I don't think he's being a hypocrite.
Okay, here's the thing. There is a great deal of extent to which I agree with you. That, like, I don't care what a person, like, necessarily personally believes as long as their goal is to do what's best for the people. So in this case, I don't give a shit if you would never in a million years personally get an abortion, but you would never do enact anti-choice legislation, which, LOL, every person who's ever gotten an abortion has been the person who's been like, oh, I'd never get an abortion. They get pregnant. They're like, well, you don't understand my circumstance. I'm 25 and
right. If churches kicked out every woman who had an abortion, they would be empty.
Fucking Christ. Here is why I believe those criticisms are valid, but I will say this.
Yeah.
Do I want to kick these dudes out of the Democratic Party? No. In 20 years, do I want these dudes to not be a part of the party? Kind of. So you're
like, because there's a big difference between Connor Lamb, who I don't have a problem with on that particular issue, and someone in our neck of the woods, Dan Lipinski, who's a Democrat, who is anti-choice, but a Democrat.
Oh, that motherfucker.
Like, he lost that he won that primary by just a little bit.
What a bummer that was.
Total
this
bummer.
is primary week in Illinois.
Total bummer that he won the primary, because, like, your options are that guy or the neo-Nazi. Those are your options.
Is that who he was running against?
Yeah, he's up against a Republican neo-Nazi who literally, his website says, yeah, Nazis are all right. So you're gonna, I'm not in his district. I'm just saying he would get the vote. He's gonna win that race. He better win that race.
Yeah.
But I don't like that guy. I want him out. Connor Lamb doesn't bother me.
Okay.
Tim Kaine doesn't bother me.
So Tim Kaine is exactly who I was going to bring up. And I think Tim Kaine is a great example for this. So in terms of my options right now, like 2018 Jessica looking at the options of the largely white male straight population who is running this country. Fine. If you're not going to legislate against my right to decide how my body does, then fine. That said, when we continue to have rhetoric such as that Connor Lamb espouses and Tim Kaine does, what happens is we are continuing this narrative that abortion is a moral issue. And I think that's the thing that we as a party and
that
we
as a
people,
moral issue, he's opposed to it. And there's something wrong with it?
Yes. So what they're saying is, well, abortion is morally bad, but it's a necessary evil. Let's call it, like, I think that's sort of their stance, right? It's a necessary evil. In a perfect world, none of us would want abortions, of course. Like, we're not pro more abortions. We're pro making sure my body is roughly in the area that I want it to be vis-a-vis human in my womb. But the problem is when we keep doing rhetoric like this Tim Kaine, this Connor Lamb, I would never get an abortion, but if you need an abortion, I'm not going to stop you from doing it.
But I will judge you.
But I will.
That sort of thing.
It's a garbage rhetoric, and it's this way of having it both ways. It really is. It's a way of.
So you're saying the pro-life people who are criticizing Connor Lamb kind of have a point.
100% they have a point. And God, it's hard for me to say that. So I think, yes, I understand. I think this purity test thing can be dangerous, but part of me is like, yeah, no, get them the fuck out of here. Like, I don't need your garbage opinions about my abortion or my period or my IUD. I don't need that from you. I need you to defend my rights.
I appreciate it right now, fine, because I need that vote. It's better than the alternative.
Yes.
But down the line, I hope you get primaried out at some point.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the Battle of the Bulge. Like, we're just like eking our way into like the culture, and eventually we're going to lose the stragglers. Listen, Battle of the Bulge wasn't my best metaphor, maybe because I don't necessarily know exactly how it happened. I do know it was in World War II, and my teacher drew a thing on it on my whiteboard. But it's just one of those things of like, this isn't my dream cast of Congress. But yeah, would I rather a Connor Lamb who, I'm not crazy about everything that he says, but I believe that he will vote in my best interest. Mm-hmm. Would I rather him over Mike Pence, who's
or Rick Saccone, who he beat, or anyone like that?
Right.
Fair enough. That changes my mind on that a little bit.
I changed your mind?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm so proud.
Let me bring up this. Did you see last week tonight with John Oliver and Mike Pence segment?
Yeah, I have something on that.
Here's the one thing I want to bring.
I'm sorry. I've seen most of it. I was trying to watch it, and then some asshole shows up my door, wants to record with me, and I'm like, I have 5 minutes left of this segment.
This is when you were watching it? It's been like a week.
Okay, I have a job.
Whatevs. I have 2 babies. I found a way to ignore them and watch the segment. All right. So the one thing I want to bring up. So he did his long.
You also sleep 3 minutes a night.
That is true.
Sometimes when I IM you in the morning, I'm like, is he still up or is he up already?
That's a good question. It could be both.
I never know. Go ahead.
The one thing he said, so he did if you didn't watch the show, he did a very long segment on Mike Pence and his conservative views.
He's a garbage monster.
Yes. And one of the things he brought up is that Mike Pence, at one point when he was running for Congress, alluded to the idea that he supports gay conversion therapy.
But he phrased it extremely carefully.
Yeah, it was kind of vague.
It was like money should go to to support people who want to change their sexuality. Because Mike Pence, that's Indiana's biggest problem. Right. You fucking nailed it. It's corn and gay people. I'm sorry, go ahead. It's late. I'm getting slap happy.
All right. So, the thing is, Mike Pence hasn't really gone on the record of really saying. He tries to avoid the question whenever you ask him about it.
Hey, Hammond, really quick. Name an opinion Mike Pence has.
Donald Trump is the greatest man who ever lived.
And he has Lego hair. Those are 2 opinions.
So here's the question, though. Here's what John Oliver said. Mike Pence may claim that he did not and does not support gay conversion therapy, but he very much supports those who do support it. And what they meant by that is Mike Pence doesn't really talk about it. He'll say, no, I don't support gay conversion therapy. But then he speaks at Focus on the Family events. And he says James Dobson, the founder of Focus on the Family, is a mentor. And Focus on the Family is this evangelical Christian bigoted organization. And here's what I want to mention. Focus under James Dobson was vehemently anti-gay. They were part of that anti-gay push in a decade ago, right?
Yeah.
That is what they're known for. Fine. So Mike Pence loves Focus on the Family. He loves what they do, even though they do conversion therapy. Here's what was interesting this week. After this Mike Pence piece came out, and I hope everyone bought that bunny book because hilarious.
I haven't had time because I couldn't get to the link at the end of the video.
Oh, finish it when I leave. Focus on the Family has a new president for several years now. His name is Jim Daly. He put out, he sent an email to his mailing list, of which I'm on because why not? And basically, here's the question that they sent in the teaser.
Nightmare, man.
His teaser was reporters and commentators have alleged that Focus on the Family has practiced and endorsed so-called gay conversion therapy. Is that true?
No,
click the link to find out.
It's not gay conversion therapy. It's coaxing boys into vaginas.
Yes.
Am I doing good with words?
I don't even know what that meant. But basically, I read that teaser and I'm like, oh, he's going to find a way to say, no, we don't. They're lying to you, mainstream media fake news. Like, we don't support gay conversion therapy. And here's what he literally said in the article. For the record, we at Focus do not advocate for any therapy that, quote, requires or promises categorical change or sexual conversion.
Lol.
Well, okay.
God.
Just because you don't say you have to change or that we promise you're going to change.
No, because they frame it as you want to change.
Right.
We're helping you change.
Right.
We're the real heroes.
That's exactly it. That's what they do. But they were like, well, we don't do electrical shock therapy.
That's inhumane.
That's inhumane. We just say if you want to change your sexual orientation, we will help you through that. That's what we're talking about. That's not how gay works. So basically, he gave this long response about, look, the media is wrong about all this stuff.
Say
we don't
goodnight
do
to
gay.
Mikey. Mikey's going to
Hello,
bed.
Mikey. Good night, Mikey.
Love you.
We don't do any of the stuff that the mainstream media accuses us of.
Yeah.
As they explain that they totally do all the stuff.
That's exactly
the
what
media
they do.
So John Oliver was right that Mike Pence supports a group that
Yeah.
supports gay conversion therapy.
Yeah,
I just
yeah,
want to get that out of the way.
So essentially John Oliver's bit was that Pence's daughter released a book about their rabbit named Marlon Bundo,
Yep.
which is fucking great. It's such a good name. And so this bunny visited Focus on the Family, and they're like, his daughter wrote this book, which I know this is like a really shitty thing. We're like, that girl did not write any book. Like, they slapped her name on that. I'm sorry, that
And
was
Karen
probably
Pence, Mike Pence's wife, did the illustrations.
Mother Pence.
Mother Pence.
She prefers. And so he released another one about how Marlon Bundo is definitely gay and has a bow tie.
And it was trying to get gay married, but then the evil stink bug tries to stop them from getting gay
See, I
married.
didn't make that part of the video.
Oh, it's good.
So this brings me to a gentleman named Gary Varvel.
Go on.
He wrote an op-ed piece for the Indy Star in Indianapolis, Indiana. My former state of residence, always doing me proud. So he's super mad because Christians are being oppressed.
Oh, really? How are they being oppressed?
Yeah, I'm going to run through this quickly because there's not like anything new. It's just the same sort of garbage. So here's the things he's mad at. One, he's mad at Jim Carrey because Jim Carrey made a portrait of Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
He didn't use her name in that picture, but everyone knew who it was in the
Because
picture.
it was actually a very good painting. It looked just like her. And he called her a, quote, so-called Christian because she lies for the wicked.
Jim Carrey with the shade.
Yeah, right?
I mean, he's wrong about vaccines, but that was not bad.
And is he Christian?
I don't know. I've never known him as a religious dude.
I have neither.
Just
quick sidebar.
irrational.
Did you see the documentary about like the behind the scenes filming of him doing Man on the Moon?
No.
So you know Man on the Moon? Have you
The
seen
Andy Kaufman one.
Yes.
No, I haven't seen it. Because of course I haven't.
You're aware of its existence.
Yes. Yeah.
So they have a regular length, I guess, documentary on Netflix of just like all the behind the scenes shit that they filmed for that. And at the time, the studio they wanted to make a documentary that kind of like came out alongside it of just like Jim's transformation into Andy Kaufman. And the studio wouldn't release it because they're like, he comes off like a fucking dick and we want them to like our dude. And they're like, no, what are you talking about? We're going to release it now. And holy shit, it made me so deeply uncomfortable to watch. So they have not only behind the scenes stuff of Jim Carrey as Andy Kaufman behind the scenes, which he was like full in character 24/7. And then also interviews with Jim Carrey now talking about his experience and how he would like go up to Andy Kaufman's relatives as Andy Kaufman.
creepy.
It was deeply uncomfortable for me to watch. Anyway, so Jim Carrey's not my favorite human. I did like Ace Ventura: Pet Detective as a child. He has some
What about this?
problematic
Okay,
things.
so wait, why is Indiana oppress the Christians in Indiana?
Well, so he's mad at he's mad at he's mad at Hollywood in general because Hollywood is anti-Christian. So here's a quote about the aforementioned Oliver segment. Gary said, quote, with dripping sarcasm, Oliver said, it turned out in a complete coincidence, we also wrote a book about Mike Pence's rabbit that has also been published. He pointed out this rabbit that his rabbit differed from Pence's. In Oliver's book, Marlon Bundo is gay and wants to marry another male bunny. Question, do you think Oliver would have attacked a Muslim for having the same beliefs?
No, because a Muslim wouldn't be in charge, like...
Ding, ding, ding. He also said, it's not just comedians who
like, how dare you punch up when you could be punching way, way down?
It's not just comedians who show their disdain for Christians. After Trump tapped Larry Kudlow to be his economic advisor, Stephanie Rule of MSNBC said, if you notice when Larry Kudlow spoke at CNBC yesterday, he ended by saying, however things work out, it will be God's will. Then she added incredulously, that's an interesting way to talk about being the national economic advisor to the president, God's will. And this dude is so mad that she said that, even though it was like very good shade that she threw.
Stephanie Rule's awesome.
Yeah, no, she's very cool. So he said, if left unchallenged, how far will religious intolerance go? Will biblical principles be banned as hate speech? That's what happened in the United Kingdom in 2017. Gordon Lamore, 42, a Christian evangelist, was accused of a hate crime and jailed after... This is definitely not slanted and definitely exactly how that happened. After telling the story of Adam and Eve to a 19-year-old who asked him about God's views on homosexuality.
Yeah, I'm going to guess there's more to it than that.
No, I don't think so. I think he nailed it. Travis Weber, director of the Center for Religious Liberty at the Family Research Council, said, quote, while free speech law in the United States is relatively stronger than that of Canada and Western Europe, we cannot relax our vigilance. Laws perpetually only several steps behind culture, and as our prevailing culture norms only increasingly demand only, quote, correct speech be permitted, the law won't be far behind. So this guy's definitely concerned that Christians are going to be illegal in a minute or whatever.
That's how it works.
Never mind that every president ever has been Christian and 90 zillion% of our representatives are Christian. It's defo going to be illegal because that's how laws do.
Speaking of which, there was a poll that was taken by a group called Morning Consult, and what they wanted to do is to figure out who's the most influential endorser when it comes to politics.
Me, Jessica.
Yes, you're not on the list.
What?
Yeah.
Rude.
So, like, for
I'm
example, they said,
atheist.
if you're a Democrat, who's the most influential voice? Who would actually persuade you to vote for a particular candidate, and who would be least likely, or who, if they told you should vote for this person, you would run in the other direction.
Oh, okay.
So not surprisingly, like if Barack Obama said you should vote for somebody, Democrats are like, yeah, fine, I'll probably vote for that person. If Donald Trump says it, you're not going to go in that direction. But they also broke it down because they broke down the answers by like your religion and things like that.
Okay.
So for evangelicals specifically, this is what I found interesting. Who's the most trusted celebrity endorsement? Whose green light would make you say, all right, I'll vote for whoever you tell me to vote for?
So would have said Billy Graham, but he
was not on the list, and I think it's because they published this after he's dead. Yeah.
Okay, wait. I want to guess.
So who's the most influential for evangelicals?
For evangelical... Is it like a Joel Osteen type?
Joel Osteen was number 8 on the list.
Okay, I can do better than this then.
And it was like a worst Family Feud game right now.
Wait, who's like a long-standing congressman who's evangelical? Am I close?
No.
Is it okay? This is the best game I've ever played. Is it a celebrity? Is it somebody in politics?
So, not necessarily. The question is just whose opinion of you should vote for this person would be most meaningful if you were an evangelical Christian.
So is number
Joel
one...
Osteen, number 8.
So is number 1 a person in...
Not answering
Pat
that
Robertson.
No, thankfully. His name was not on the list at all.
So is this person in politics?
Yes.
Okay.
I will tell you this. Hillary Clinton's vote of endorsement would send evangelicals would vote in the other direction.
Well, yeah. She's
surprise.
famously a Satanist.
Strangely, Kim Kardashian was number 2 in the I'm going to vote the opposite of what you tell me to vote.
Hey, cool. It's 2011 and we're paying attention to Kim Kardashian.
Right.
Good job, society.
Now, here's what I found interesting. Number 1 most trusted endorsement
For evangelicals?
Trump. Okay. What? I get it. He's president. He's famous. That's probably why.
I definitely
but
woke up Mikey
just to be
now.
clear, Donald Trump's endorsement means more influential for evangelicals. Number 2, Mike Pence. Just think about this for a second.
I'm sorry, that's factually untrue because look at Roy Moore and look at Saccone. Saccone. That's just factually untrue.
Were just outmatched by other people. So they might have been, they might have said, oh, Donald Trump supports him. The evangelicals did vote for Roy Moore. I think he got 80%, Roy Moore did, 80% of the evangelical vote. He just got beaten by other people who weren't by the white evangelicals, I should say. But he was just black evangelicals.
We have to make for the rest of our lives.
It really is. Black evangelicals did not vote for Roy Moore. A lot of other religious people did not, and obviously Democrats and non-religious people did not. Donald Trump was number 1. Again, just to be clear, for evangelicals, Mike Pence, who is one of their guys, who is evangelical to the core, number 2. Donald Trump, the guy who doesn't do any of the evangelical stuff you're supposed to do and is the worst albatross to have around your neck as an evangelical, he's number 1.
Cool.
Just to finish off some of the other people, George W. Bush's endorsement would be number 3. Paul Ryan, who may be the closest to Congress. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama were next on the list.
Really?
Yeah, and I think the reason is they did not separate white evangelicals from all other evangelicals.
Sure.
So when you include black evangelicals in the mix, yeah.
They're shocking.
And not white evangelicals. the Obamas have sway there too. Barack and Michelle Obama also made the not good endorsement list for evangelicals.
Hashtag white people.
Here's a question for you. For atheists, agnostics, and other non-religious people in the none category, who is the number 1 endorser? Who is the most trusted endorsement for nuns?
Is it Obama?
The answer was...
Hemant Mehta.
No, you were right. It was Obama.
It was Obama? Okay.
Barack Obama was number 1. Michelle Obama was number 2.
Nice.
And I was surprised by number 3.
Wait, let me guess.
You get one guess.
Fuck. Gabby Giffords?
No.
Gifford. One.
Also no.
Okay. Tell me.
Bernie Sanders.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
I was surprised because I imagined he would
garbage.
He would influence, I thought, maybe a certain segment, but I didn't realize overall he was so big among atheists.
I think Bernie Sanders right now is occupying a really good spot in that, he's an influencer, but not necessarily going to be.
I was also really curious. You mentioned him earlier. I wonder where Billy Graham would have ended up on this list because I don't know that he would have been number 1.
Did Billy Graham make a...
He wasn't a political guy. Did he
ever make it his business to support anybody in particular, or did he just show up at the White House and whoever was there was his boy? He did not take sides, at least publicly. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Not like his son does now. I genuinely don't know that he would have been number 1 on the list, though. I think he's one of those, he's like a book you have on your shelf that, you like to have it there, but you don't actually read it. I think a lot of Christians might have been like, oh, yeah, if Billy Graham says it, I'll follow him.
Sure.
But, in practice...
But you're not going to pick him up and
not really.
Ask him.
I did want to bring up one quick story that here's some good news of all the stuff that's going on. Richard Dawkins announced this week, here's the backstory you need to know to make this make sense. The God Delusion is the best-selling atheist book, most likely, of all time. 3 million copies, according to whatever media reports. 3 million copies of The God Delusion have been sold. But a PDF, pirated version of the book, translated in Arabic, has been downloaded and going around Islamic parts of the world.
Really?
A lot.
Cool.
I don't know how you really measure how many times a PDF travels everywhere, but...
Can you?
He said reports, whatever reports those are, have put it at 13 million downloads.
Wow.
Again, I don't know how you measure that, but whatever. It's been floating around for a while. But he doesn't care. He's good, because they're not getting my book any other way, really. And
good for him to be fucking have it.
Oh, yeah, he's go ahead, pirate it, go. But who wants to be the Arabic translator for the God Delusion? That's a dangerous job right there.
Yikes, yeah.
But there is an Arabic translation. It's just you don't want to be caught with it. So if there's a pirated version, you could just delete the file, fine. So here's what's interesting. Based on that fact that it's been going around the Islamic world, and because it's hard to get these books in the hands, all of his science books too, in the hands of people who kind of really need to read it because they're oppressed by religion in other ways.
Yeah.
The Center for Inquiry, which merged with his Richard Dawkins Foundation not that long ago. They are planning to release several of his books for free, translated in those other languages.
Wow.
And specifically, we are talking, I just want to make sure I have all this. They're going to translate books in Arabic, Urdu, Farsi, and Indonesian.
Wow.
Where you can't, and only if there's not already a sanctioned translation being sold, because that's a copyright issue. But if no one's picked up on those books, they're going to provide them for free for anyone to download in those languages. Not necessarily the God Delusion, again, because there is already a sanctioned Arabic copy of it. So, like, pirate away.
Right.
But he's not going to make that one available in Arabic. But, like, his science books that are amazing, those will be available soon. I don't know when. But he seemed really excited about it. When the report came out, I emailed like to get some data on this. He wrote back like the reports are all wrong. They have all this misinformation because the headlines were like he's going to offer the God Delusion for free in Arabic. That's not the case at all. But he said other books will be made available in multiple languages, not just Arabic, very soon. And that's an awesome. That's good.
And honestly,
good on him.
To me, I feel like in this instance he's really walking the walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He won't get any royalties for that stuff.
Yeah, because like say what you will about Dawkins, he's definitely imperfect, but like this is absolutely so in line with sort of the mission of most kind of global atheists of get information to as many people as possible,
and, again,
and let them do with it what they will.
Yeah, it's not even remember, it's not just the God Delusion. It's like River Out of Eden. It's his book of essays about science and how beautiful it is.
I wonder if
it's evolution books.
I wonder if they'll do The Greatest Show on Earth.
They might. I don't know. He hasn't released a name of which books he's going to do. But I love that story. I'm so excited that he's doing that.
That's really great. That makes me super happy.
I do have one more. I'm not going to spend forever on this, even though I could. But there's a book.
I want to say 20 minutes before he came over, you're like, I'm going to do my best to scrape together a couple stories.
You know, these are all stories I've written about over the course of the week.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm like,
I guess I'm the only one doing research.
But there's a book that came out this week. I was very excited when I heard about this book because I'm like, oh, it's a guy arguing against atheism. It's being put out by a popular publisher. So it's like, well, it's going to get some attention. And then I got an advanced copy of the book and I started reading it. And I'm like, oh, I hate this book. Not because it says my beliefs are wrong, but because there's no substance. Here's the thing.
Way I hate Christian movies, not because I hate Christianity, but like
stereotypes and
strawmans.
Strawman all the way through. So the author is Anthony DiStefano. His book is called Inside the Atheist Mind.
I have one of those.
I'm actually surprised he acknowledged that atheists have minds in the title.
Take that.
But let me read you a couple of here's the reason
I hate this.
They published an excerpt on foxnews.com. So
Wait, really?
Yeah. On the day of the book's release this week, I'll start you off. There's no polite way to say it. Atheists today are the most arrogant, ignorant, and dangerous people on earth. Arrogant and ignorant on foxnews.com.
And dangerous.
How are we dangerous? I was very curious to learn how we were dangerous and arrogant. His examples then, because then he starts listing examples.
I'm so happy to be here right now. This is my happy place.
These pompous prigs get offended by the slightest bit of religious imagery in public and mortified if even a whisper of Merry Christmas escapes the lips of some well-meaning but naive department store clerk during the, quote, holiday season.
Yeah, I mean, do you know how many department store clerks I had to beat up this Christmas season?
Yeah.
It was exhausting. I didn't want to do it, but I had to.
It's bullshit because no one goes to a department store, so that couldn't even happen. Here's how else we know horrible atheists are. Last December, he says, the group American Atheists launched its annual billboard campaign with the slogan, "Stay away from church. It's all fake news." Which, one, that was funny. Two,
it was my favorite slogan, but yeah.
Who cares? Why is that dangerous? Why is that bad? It's like, all right, you disagree with it. They're poking fun at your faith. Whatever. Like, it's funny or it's not funny, but it's not evil. It's not evil. He went on. In February, the, quote, American Humanist Association became furious.
I'm sorry.
They
was
put it in quotes.
Americans was in
American,
quote, or-
no, the whole thing. American Human
So I would've
Association.
Loved that.
He put that in quotes for reasons I don't get. Why do you need the group's name in quotations? That is their name.
To be fair, he could just also be very bad at grammar.
No. They became furious when President Trump had the gall to mention Christianity and Jesus Christ without also mentioning atheists at the National Prayer Breakfast. How dare he? Here's the thing. Trump only mentioned Jesus and Christianity. He didn't even mention the existence of other religions except in a passive sort of way.
They're not his base.
And even Obama mentioned that there are people who don't hold religious beliefs when he gave that speech.
Yeah.
So and they weren't furious. They just called him out on it. A couple other things.
I was probably furious.
DiStefano goes on to say, yes, these atheists are loud, nasty, unapologetic, and in your face.
Those are all true.
Maybe, yes.
That's my next cross stitch. What was it? Loud, nasty, unapologetic, in your face?
And in your face.
Somebody come at me. I'm going to cross stitch that for you.
And here's why we're arrogant. Atheists believe that the vast majority of human beings from all periods of time and all places on the earth have been wrong about the thing most important to them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And by the way, you know who else thinks evangelical Christians are wrong? Everyone else right before you. Every religious group thinks every other religious group is wrong just because all the rest of them believe in a God or gods or whatever. Doesn't mean you're all on the same team.
Yeah, that's the thing is when you say oh, you believe everybody was wrong before you, but yeah, we believe that about almost everything else.
Yeah.
When we figured out germ theory, we're oh, I guess wind isn't making people sick as much as it's microbes.
Yeah, right.
Go ahead.
He goes on to give a list of there were scientists who were Christian. It's yup, no one denied that ever.
Sure are. And
there's a lot more who are
still are.
Yeah. So anyway, this guy writes this, and
I
then
love
of course
this guy. I want to read this book.
It's so bad. It goes on to say where does he get the dangerous bit? It's the old Mao and Stalin and Pol Pot killed all these people.
On a fucking
they did not
crutch.
kill people saying God doesn't exist. Stab, stab. That's not how it worked.
Don't speak for my people.
And then he says, of course, Adolf Hitler was an atheist. Everyone knows that. That's not true. And my favorite bit, that's exactly what modern day atheists are. Bullies. Bullies who are doing their best to intimidate the rest of us into silence. Said the guy with the book deal who just released a book and published an excerpt on foxnews.com.
Also, you can tell that Hammond's a bully because he lightly pounded, touched his fist on my kitchen table. He couldn't even bring himself to give me it's just a gentle brush.
Don't mock my evil fist. So that book came out, Inside the Atheist Mind. It's very short.
I was going to say, is it long? Because I might have to read this shit. And I'm on my Goodreads challenge, and I have to read 25 books this year, and I'm behind.
If you're listening to this, here's what you should do.
Yeah.
You can go to Amazon, go look at Inside the Atheist Mind, and preview the book, and just look at the table of contents. That's it.
I want to read it.
Just look at the table of contents because it's hilarious.
I want to read it so bad.
Okay. So is that everything I had? That's everything I had. That's more than enough.
A thing happened. Oh, so I
That's
said,
enough for me.
Yeah, no, I still have shit to say.
Go, yes.
No, just quickly, the Inefficient Kitchen at Rick Williams.
Questions.
Rick Williams, PGA. No, he, they just tweeted me, literally as I was frantically searching for news stories, they tweeted me about this thing about Tennessee schools are trying to get them to do In God We Trust. I don't know. It's the same fucking garbage we've talked about for years. Anyway, I really appreciate you sending it our way. Fuck those people. But
Tennessee, not the tweeters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, take it as what you will. So now I'm on to listener mail. That was all the news-based garbage I had. So, question from a listener. So if you want to
friendlyatheistpodcast at gmail.com.
Thank you for keeping me on track. This is an origin story type of question. Hemant, what motivated you to go from math teacher to famous in the, quote, godless heathen world blogger? Jessica, how did you become a writer for The Friendly Atheist? And for both, has there ever been any fallout from being openly atheist, whether online or in real life? Parentheses, I live in a small Arkansas town, and I understand it's easier in the city, but I imagine there are still some less than open-minded people people around, be it coworkers, acquaintances, online strangers, etc. Love the show. Tracy T.
Thanks, Tracy. As
Thanks,
we've
Tracy.
discussed on this show, I have no friends, so the fallout
Has been minimal.
My family, we don't talk about religion.
Uh-huh.
But we are on good terms because we don't talk about religion.
Well,
but they'll passive aggressively.
And they like your human children.
They like the human grandbabies, so they're like, "We'll teach the babies prayer." And I'm like, "Are you babysitting them? I don't care. You can teach them Scientology. I don't care." Yes.
Do your kids have to brush off the chair before they sit down? That's a Jane thing, right?
It is kind of a Jane thing. They don't do that, but they've said some of the mantras and things like that. And I'm just like, are my parents watching the babies? I don't care.
Cool.
Do whatever you want.
Are they feeding them and keeping them alive?
Yes.
Great.
To answer that first question, how did I leave teaching? Here's the deal. I did the blog as a hobby for many, many years with making no money. Then there are some ways you can always monetize anything online. And I did that for a little while. And it's fine, but it's a hobby. And then at some point, as I was teaching, the blog got bigger. Patheos came along and said, we'll pay you if you write for us instead of doing it on your own.
But Patheos came along, 2011?
Yeah, several years after I had been blogging. And again, it was a hobby. And at some point, it's like, if you give me 10 more hours in a day where I'm not teaching and I could focus on the website alone, I think I could almost transition.
And if I have a wife who's a lawyer.
That's not the reason. But the reason we were like, you know what? We don't have any kids at the moment. It's worth taking a chance for a year or two, and let's see if I can float.
Wait, this happened before your oldest was born?
Yeah. And then we're like, take a chance. Let's take a chance now. Let's see if I can make it work. And if it doesn't work, I can go back to teaching because my certificate's still good. And then it worked. So I was fortunate because I don't think a lot of bloggers, YouTubers, podcasters have that opportunity. So it's one of those, I did it as a hobby for a long time, found a way to monetize it, but like it worked. And that doesn't always work.
Do you have like thoughts of long term? Like obviously we're going to do this podcast until the heat death of the universe.
Right. How long will I blog?
I mean,
I've thought about it.
Do you ever see yourself like stepping away and going back to like the 9-to-5 grind?
Not teaching. I don't know what I would do.
Well, you don't like humans or human children.
Right. So I don't know. I don't know that blogging is going to be around forever because I keep seeing all the other blogs that are like run by professional companies and they're shuttering the blogs. And like, I see those writers who I love and they're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And hopefully they can transition to another career in that area. But it's like, oh, the blogs are going away. And so and I've seen this with YouTube too. There are a lot of YouTubers I really like, but YouTube changes an algorithm and now no one makes YouTube money talking about atheism. And I've seen them disappear or talk about other things too. Yeah. It's like, oh, well, there goes that too. So I'm sure it'll happen for me too. At that point, I'll have to find something else to do. I don't know what that is yet.
That's a stone cold bummer, my friend.
You know what? It's not a bummer. I'm so lucky to be doing all this stuff. But I'm like, I know it's temporary. It's not going to last forever because I see it not lasting forever for everybody. I'll do what I can while I have the opportunity.
But there's certainly people who've made their living not even doing this kind of thing and blogging, but like public speaking and things like that. That's
true. I'm not that sort of speaker though. I don't know. I'm not as controversial as the ones who could do this all the time everywhere and like
you should get a TED Talk.
Yeah, I'll just talk to the people and make that happen.
Call TED. 1-800.
This is not me being a bummer. This is just me. Look, realistically, most blogs are not around anymore. I'm sure something. But here's why I appreciate Patheos. Like they actually have a team that's professional and knows what they're doing. Yeah, and like they're good and dedicated. So I love working for them. But don't you think
there's definitely a space for news aggregators for a specific interest group?
No, less so.
Really?
Like you're saying, like, there's a niche for an audience that wants news about atheism, just like there might be, but like you would think that would apply to sports too. Like there's got to be a niche for like the Chicago Cubs beat reporter. And then I see like, oh, even the Tribune laid off their beat reporters.
Yeah, but like, that's a different, like, listen, me looking at a guy like icing his elbow for the third day in a row is not the same as like atrocities committed in the name of God.
I know a lot of bloggers who do different niche sort of blogging, and most of them have other jobs.
Yeah, I guess also I feel like maybe Gawker shuttering was sort of the beginning of the end of that.
Yeah, and a lot of other sites have gone down after that too. And look, I'm sure people who are listening to this podcast probably listen to other atheist podcasts or follow other atheists or LGBT writers or feminist writers or whatever. And I guess the question I would ask is, how many of the people that you read, that you listen to, that you follow, how many of them do it full time? My guess is it's not that many, because I follow a lot of them too.
No podcaster. I shouldn't.
You know
say
what
that.
I mean?
Very,
very
few podcasters.
So again, it's one of those things where I'm like, wow, I'm lucky to be blogging and being able to make it work.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to last forever because not everyone does it. And at that point, I'll do something. I don't know what, but yeah, I hope I don't have to think about that yet.
No, yeah. I mean, I think we're extraordinarily lucky. I mean, you're singularly lucky, but you and I are both very lucky to be in the position that we are, that not because we started the podcast very much on a whim and as a way of like, there's no way we can build it into our schedule. Because like, yes, we podcast once a week and it requires total 3 hours of commitment of like researching, traveling.
Right. And the research is what I do anyway, because I'm writing the post. So when we're researching, it's like, which stories are worth talking about?
Yeah. So, but like 3 hours a week when you have 2 human children and now I'm working
They're sitting in
full-time.
the car, by the way. They're waiting for this time.
Did you crack the window? It's really cold out. Should I go send Dottie in there?
Nah, they'll be fine.
Okay. Like we both have shit going on in our lives, but I do hope that I think we will. The fact that we live close to each other is very helpful.
Yeah, that helps.
That was a fucking game changer.
Boom.
Like, because I almost moved to Evanston. This podcast would have been dead if I moved to Evanston. The drive from here to Evanston is fucking nuts.
long.
Oh, wait, I want to talk about me.
Hey, when did you start writing?
Jessica, how did you... Okay, so here's the thing. It's the least romantic story of how I... Do you remember it all?
No. I was going to say I have no idea how I even met you. Versus much less writing for the website.
I will tell you how I met you is Mikey recognized you when we went to the Reason Rally.
No way.
So back in the day, so I used to, before I wrote before I was in any way affiliated with Friendly Atheist like brand, I read it every day because I was sort of, I wasn't necessarily a new atheist, but I was new like into the, like getting into it. And I think most of us who have kind of taken a step towards a little more like political involvement have their year or so where like all they do is read everything they can about like evil Christians like murdering whatever. And so I would, when I was on my couch, I would always have the Friendly Atheist blog open, and in those days Heaven's face was on the blog.
God, I'm glad we changed that.
And so I had emailed you a couple times in a very like casual reader way, and I think I asked you something. But I mentioned that I was going to the Reason Rally, and you're like, oh, I hope to see you there. And again, a very like, hey, kid, like, see you never way. So anyway, Mikey and I were in D.C. at the Reason Rally in 2012, and Mikey just elbows me. He's like, don't I see his face all the time on your computer? And you were walking by, and I shook your hand. I was like, hi, I'm Jessica, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, God, not even that long later, maybe a couple months later, you put out a call and just said, I need more writers. And at that time, I was working for the Chicago Tribune. I was making $12 an hour, placing classified ads, having people from like Orlando and Newport News, Virginia, yell at me all the time.
Living the dream.
Living the dream. But because it was an inbound call center where I worked, you had like a little bit of downtime.
Yeah. So
haven't put out a call for writers, and I said I was interested. You asked me for a couple pieces, and I had just watched Inherit the Wind.
Okay, the Scopes Monkey Trial movie.
Scopes Monkey Trial movie, and so I wrote kind of a synthesis of that and another piece. I don't remember what it was. And you're like, yeah, you seem regular.
Cool.
And I just started writing. And honestly, like in those days, I was making $12 an hour in 2012 in Chicago, and I had just moved in with Mikey, and like, were it not for the additional income I had for Friendly Atheists, like, I don't know what I would have done. And it was like a couple $100 a month.
Yeah.
But
By the way, the way I find a lot of writers nowadays, because I don't put out the calls necessarily, but like, I read a lot of blogs. If you pitch me like, hey, I have a blog here.
Yeah.
I'll subscribe to it. I'll check it out. And that's kind of how I found a lot of the writers that I work with now. So.
Yeah. I mean, and it was super fortuitous. It was very much a million and one odds, right? Because not only was I a decent writer and had the time that you needed somebody to commit. But I was living in Chicago. Hemant was living in Naperville at the time. And I think like even before I started writing for the blog, do you remember you called me and you're like, I have extra tickets to a Cubs game. Do you want to come?
That sounds about right.
Do you remember that? It was you, me, Mikey, and somebody else.
Oh, it was a friend of mine. I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And we
saw a
sat.
game.
We sat in the bleachers.
That was fun.
And it was the first time I'd met you. Besides that, and I hadn't even started writing. And you were like, because at that time you were like, I want people writing about sports and atheism, or I want feminism and atheism, or like you want niches. And you're like, so what are you going to write about? I was like, I don't know. And I just wrote about whatever. And honestly, the portfolio I kind of built through the Friendly Atheist thing is how I got my job with a content marketing company, and it's how I've been able to work as I'm in marketing now, so I'm not like an author. But
it's creativity sort of thing.
It's creativity, and it was my ability to work as a writer. So
that's awesome.
Realistically, I owe Hemant a whole lot. I'm not making eye contact when I say that because I'm not comfortable with gratitude.
I own you.
How fucking dare you? I've put so much wine in you.
You have.
Has there ever been any fallout from being openly atheist, whether online or in real life?
If it happened to me, I've been lucky that it hasn't really they haven't told me they're not my friend. Maybe they unfriended me on Facebook and I haven't noticed.
Yeah, I super agree.
But for the most part, the people I'm super close with, we're super close for reasons that don't have anything to do with atheism or the blog. So it's that didn't affect anything. But again, I've been lucky in that sense that I have relationships on other things before the blog, and I'm still close to those people. So it didn't really create some fallout with like my religious community, because it's not like I was super tight with that. You know what I mean? Like the people I knew from the temple growing up, we're friends now, but it's not because of that, you know?
Right.
So it's like we have other things to hang off of.
So this has definitely been a thing that I have thought about and like really, because like how many things influence your life that you have no idea. So like on the one hand, I definitely got my first job as like in the marketing writing space because of my work on Friendly Atheist. But I was also unemployed on and off for from January 2016 up until this week. And like, yeah, I had some temp gigs in there, but like, who knows how many jobs I did not get because they found this podcast and heard me swearing or whatever. So I really have no idea. But I will say this, and I'm going to transition smoothly because I'm a professional broadcaster into our happy thing of the week. Is that I just started my job. I've only been there for 4 days. But I have spent the last, I'm 32 now. I started looking for professional work when I was 23. So I spent the last 9 years having garbage jobs and taking jobs as stopgaps and being miserable all day, every day at work. And I found a job that I think I am good at and I think I'll be happy at for the long term. And the people are nice, and I just want to... It seems like such a long time, and it was such a long time, but I am so grateful for all of the bumps that went along. Because even when I was unemployed and making zero money and really, really struggling and stressed out because of it, I didn't want to, and my husband was very encouraging of like not taking just whatever job comes up just to get a job. I'm very lucky that I got, in a lot of ways, the job I've always wanted. It's in the nonprofit space. It's in the STEM space. It's with nice people. It's all women in my office, which is fucking fresh as hell. Anyway, there's been 2 birthdays this week. I've had birthday cake 2 days this week. I've been at work 4 days. This place is a good place. Fucking great. Anyway, so I'm just lucky and grateful and happy and relieved. Oh my God, so relieved. Anyway, Hemant, what's your happy thing this week?
I feel like what have I said? I don't know.
Your house is probably going to get built again?
Yeah, it was flooded for a long time. I finally will get a house fixed.
Hemant's been living at his folks' house for like
months.
6 weeks?
Something like that.
That's why I've been filming it or recording at my house. And that's why you've been hearing Dottie all the time. It's because Hemant's like, we live at your house now.
Yes.
This is what we do. Cool. This went very, very long, huh?
That's all right.
Sorry. This was a really weird episode, I think.
What's
think it was
your happy
good.
thing?
I said my happy thing. I just made a really impassioned speech about my happy job.
I thought we were still answering the other question.
Oh.
Segue to...
Yeah, I told you I segued. I can do another happy thing.
also
I have happy things in my life.
Drink
I can't
more wine.
Okay, I do not appreciate that kind of garbage from you.
Your glass is empty.
It's not yet.
Almost. If you know how to reach us, go to patreon.com/friendlyatheist.
Blueberry, BLUEBURAE. Bitches Get Stitched On is my Etsy. Hemant's at Hemant Meta on Twitter. Friendly Atheist Podcast at gmail.com if you want to send us listener mail so we can ramble on for another 20 minutes.
And if you made it up until this point in the podcast, 1, thank you.
Bless your heart.
2, I am speaking in Peoria, Illinois on Sunday morning.
So if you made it to this point in the podcast and you live in Western Illinois.
And you live in like central, wherever central Illinois is, that information we'll put up on the podcast notes Sunday morning of this weekend. Hope to see you there.
Cool.
Whoever's there. Cool.
Thanks,
Talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye.